Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 13th, 2013 Falmouth Conservation Commission hearing. Just a slight reminder, if you do have a phone on, make sure it's silenced, please. Appreciate it.
As everybody reaches for their phones.
That's just because. Beginning tonight's agenda, we have a request for continuance under a notice of intent. The first one is Michael George, 45 Dusty Miller Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes,
Jen.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until May 1st.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor for a continuance to May 1st. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved. The second is Black Beach Harbor Head Association, Little Neck Bars Road, Black Beach Hills Road, Gilbert Lane, and Drift Road, West Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 27th.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion on the table for a continuance to March 27th. Any discussion from the board or from the audience? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? So moved. Next, we have minutes to vote, jumping back to 1/23/2013. Do we have a motion for those?
Mr. Chairman, I've read the minutes and find them substantially correct and move their approval. Second.
Any other discussion from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous? So moved. Next set of minutes is 2/6/2013.
Mr. Chair, I've read the minutes from the 6th and find them substantially correct and therefore move their approval. Second.
Motion is to approve the 2/6/2013 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Next on the agenda is the request for determination of applicability. In this series of permitting, a negative finding allows the proceeding of the project. If there is a positive on this, it means that there is something other than a RDA required. The first up is Marine Biological Lab, 137 Water Street, Woods Hole, Mass., for permission to remove the existing timber pier and pilings authorized under license number 1624 without replacement. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff is recommending a -2 under the bylaw and -3 under the state, with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion on the table for a negative. Is there any discussion from the board or from the audience? Seeing none, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous? So moved. Next is, forgive me if I don't say this correctly, Neil Watanabe, 67 Minot Road, East Falmouth, Mass., for permission to gather displaced stones on the beach from the existing permitted riprap seawall and reinsert and to add new chink stones to repair remaining voids.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff has reviewed the project, we've spoken to the contractor, and we're recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move. Second.
Any discussion from the board? Any from the audience? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved. This is where I get to do my little cheat sheet here. At this point, we are now going for requests for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First, this evening, is 121 Wicker Tree Road, North Falmouth, Mass., for permission to demolish the existing house and shed and to construct a new 3-bedroom, single-family home with an attached deck, front entry, rebuild the concrete steps, concrete pad and driveway, remove a cedar tree, install dry wells, utilities, native plantings, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Good evening, Tom. Do you have any comments at this point, Jen?
No, I do not. I'll save any of my comments until after Mr. Bunker's
Thank you.
presentation. Just to let you know, Tom, I took some photos tonight, so I'm going to just send it down the board. And guys, they're double-sided. I had a slight argument with the printer.
Thank you. I'm Tom Bunker with BSS Design. We prepared these plans for the Baritza Shea. She's not here tonight. A tour of her daughters are in the audience. I can answer some questions if there are any that I can't. This proposal, one of the small original lots in Silver Beach. It's 55 feet by 95 feet. Many of the houses are on double lots or even triple lots there, but this is a single lot, and it's right next to the wetland, that large wetland area that's in the middle of Silver Beach. Is right here, not on the property, but right up against it. It was flagged by Jack Vaccaro. Subdivision there was drawn in 1898, and the house, the town assessors records say the house was built in 1952. You have the wetland nearby. It's also in a flood hazard zone, elevation A12, elevation 15, and up in the high side of the lot, up in the front, it's flood zone C. Within the flood zone, there are some slopes which are the coastal bank, and two of them along basically on the side of the house here up to the driveway. The house here itself is a walkout where the lower elevation down around 10. Coastal bank will continue along, and then the coastal bank on the right side of the house in that location. The cover of the house itself is 1,374 square feet, which is 26% of the lot. There is a shed in the backyard, and then, driveway and other concrete walks and things. The owners want to tear the house down and build new, slightly increasing the size. You can see on the second plan over, the colored in area is what's getting larger. It's just like a little U-shaped area within the house. Filled in there, and on the deck area built a little bit like another foot wider in the back. So all of the addition is on the upland side of the house. And then because of the configuration, I gave a slight twist to the house so that in that back left corner, we have now 24 feet from the edge of the wetland, and because they rotated the house, it's 24 feet in that same corner, so it's not any closer to the wetland. The right rear corner is a little closer than it would have been otherwise without twisting it, but that still conforms for zoning at 10.9 feet from the property line. When it's being rebuilt, there's this lower concrete patio kind of thing underneath it. It sticks out a little bit, protrudes from the beyond the line of the first floor deck. That is going to be rebuilt only in line with the deck, not sticking out from it, so that it's another slight reduction in the concrete area, 19 square feet. As a matter of fact, that's coming off of it. So the house is getting larger by 161 square feet, and the concrete is being reduced slightly. There's a total increase in 142 square feet increase in the house coverage. It's the house increase minus the concrete decrease of 142 square feet, 3-to-1 mitigation, 426 square feet of planting required. And that is shown on the proposed construction plan along the wetland side and along the back side of the lot. Those areas will be planted in, plus one new tree roughly in that location, a red oak, red maple, or a white oak. There'll be dry wells installed for the roof runoff. The limit of work and the planting is at least 10 feet from the house to allow for proper construction access. There's a 30-inch oak that was almost 10 feet. As I say in the narrative, it might have to be trimmed back a little bit for during the construction to keep the branches away. Other than that, there's one cedar tree that's kind of in that area of the house. That will have to be removed. There are 2 oak trees in the front yard, which are not in very good condition. They had fairly severe storm damage. And if they do get disturbed or, knocked out, they will be replaced with smaller, new oak trees. The house is connected to the town sewer system, so there is no septic system on this lot. I think that covers the presentation. I'll take questions and comments.
Thank you, Tom. Jen?
Had a busy little lot there.
Yes.
I have no real concerns with what you're proposing, just some of the methodology. That 30-inch oak on that back corner,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be able to dig that foundation without hurting that root system?
There is,
I don't have
I
much
don't-
hope for the ones in the front, but that
Yeah.
big one in the back.
it will, certainly some of the root system will be damaged. I think that's unavoidable. I should point, I actually didn't bring the architect was stuck in traffic. He was going to come down, but
And that's, how far off the house is that going to be?
I think it was
Not
about-
even-
Looks like 10 feet.
I think it's about 8 feet maybe.
Half, maybe.
It's 10.9 to the property line, and the oak tree is in there.
Yeah, that's going to have to be severely upland when you build that house,
Yeah,
too.
that part of the house that doesn't show on this, that part of the house actually is that bottom patio is going to wrap around underneath it like it does now, so it's not a full foundation wall.
Okay. All right.
So you can have a point load at the corner of the deck and then the main foundation, but that doesn't have to be totally cut off.
Okay. You have a dry well, right where your 25-foot shot is from the house to the wetland. That's right in the middle where you're proposing the mitigation plantings. Do you think that's wise?
It's not in the middle, it's on the edge.
Well, you're saying that you're going to put 91 square feet of plants in there, so
Right.
put them around the dry well?
Well, on the plan, I mean, I can move the that dry well around to the back.
Be aware that it's there, and,
Yeah.
you might have to shift the plantings a little bit. The one thing that the applicant will need to be aware of is there is encroachment on town property. You obviously show that on your plan.
Yes.
And that will be probably required to replant. That and looking at that wetland was kind of hard to tell where the flags were because most of them were gone. That whole
Yeah,
wetland had been cut. So I'm not quite sure who's doing the cutting in that neighborhood. You might want to get the word out that that's not looked upon in
The side
a good
closer
way.
closer to Wicker Tree,
Yeah.
that area? Yeah, I saw that
At the
today.
end of the
and it's-
road.
Yeah,
I'm like, well,
They weren't
it's a
around
wetland,
in
but there are no
yeah.
flags.
yeah.
But that's it, just, we'll have to watch that dry well when the mitigation plantings are installed. The shed's gonna be removed and there's no proposal to put the shed back, we're just gonna remove it? Okay.
Well, it's one that, because of the mitigation plantings and everything, it doesn't show on the older maps and photos, and there's probably no place to put it.
No. And there's gonna be plenty of storage in the house, so they won't be
Yeah.
tempted to put the shed back, okay? We'll have to watch those trees and take that as we go, Tom, so
Yeah.
there'll be a recommended condition for that. That 30-inch oak in the back corner is gonna be tricky. You don't wanna damage it to the point where it becomes, where it's dying and it just becomes a threat to the brand-new house, so we'll have to watch that. But if it's not a
Yes.
full foundation, you know, we might be
Yeah,
able to
that
do
location,
something with
it's
that.
not. We can work on that with the architect, make sure.
And when you redo the driveway, do they have to dig that up to redo it?
I was only saying redo it because it's, when digging for the foundation and everything, it's going to be quite disturbed
Okay.
by that construction.
Okay, again, like that other oak, that's on the town's property in that,
Oh, the 18-inch oak by the end,
yeah.
I don't think they would have to I mean, taking some of that wall out or something.
The side. So, and that's
Yeah.
it. Just, there'll need to be some safeguards in regards to the trees on the property, but other than that,
Thank you. Do we know whose project this is? Then I'm gonna start down with Tom. Okay, now we'll start with Tom.
I think Jen, you and Jen covered it for me, I'd say just, try to keep that window in the back. And, do what you can, can we condition those without them getting in trouble if they do end up coming down, or some incentive for them to keep them?
Through his own testimony, he already said that the trees in the front would be replaced if they didn't survive. And so I'm
and that
confident.
cedar's gonna be replaced as well, the one on the side.
Right,
So that they've-
that's it. Thank you.
Ed,
I see a house with a footprint essentially the same as what's there now, so I have no issues.
Mike,
The little retaining wall on the west side, I guess it
Yes.
is, that's staying in place.
The one that goes, this retaining wall, the part that goes onto the
Yeah.
town property, I mean, it's a little tricky through there. There's a thing in taking that all out, might actually do damage to the oak tree. So I was more or less thinking of keeping that in.
Okay. That's it.
I mean, if it got damaged to the point where it had to be removed, and then they would not put it back.
Well, that was my observation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not in very good shape, I know, and if
There
it
you go.
just
Okay.
came out, then it would come out totally.
Okay.
The part that's on the town property you're talking about. There will be a retaining wall at the end of the driveway,
Yes.
because it goes down the steps.
Well, that's the question, is that little wall, is it may not survive, it might.
no questions. Jump back and mirroring Mike's comment about the wall, if there was a lot more of that, other than just that small portion, and you had to redo it all, that would have to be under an amendment. If everything failed
Oh,
on the retaining wall,
if all that retaining wall came out, then to replace it, we'd have to amend
yes,
to replace it
yes,
in there.
yes.
I'll
That would be
I'll
just,
communicate with the contractor when he gets to that and make sure that the safeguards are taken or whatever.
right. And I want to be a little bit more clear on when you were saying the setback on the 30-inch not being a full foundation on that corner. Is it similar to what is existing now?
Yes.
Is there going to be a frost wall?
You know, it's to the best of my knowledge, the house is, the house is going back as far as it does now, but it's getting wider, only as far back as it is now. So
Okay.
if you were to draw that line across, then it's patio underneath. And I doubt if they'd put frost wall all the way across onto the patio, but then there'd have to be a footing for that corner of the deck.
Okay.
I could check with make sure, he's in traffic somewhere, but I think there's no
I would
frost.
imagine that you are correct, but I just don't see that, I
Yeah.
don't have it here.
Tom, is there any way that you could send us a PDF of the architecturals or submit them into my office
Mhm.
tomorrow? If you have a copy, I think that would be helpful, and then I can, if we have a little bit more concerns,
Yeah.
we can condition that, but I'd like to see the architecturals if you can get them to me.
Mhm.
Okay?
We actually, they should be, Board of Appeals has them, and so we're
Board of
going there
Appeals
in
has the
May, so
architecturals?
we'll give them,
Yeah,
we'll get a copy.
that would be great, If they're not full scale, just
Mhm.
give me a PDF or I'll run upstairs. Okay?
At this point in time, I'd like to open up, if anyone in the audience has any questions about this project. Is there any further discussion on the board? I would be willing to entertain a
I would
motion.
make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
We have a motion to close and take it under advisement. Any other further discussion from the audience or the board? Seeing none, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Let's see. Next on the agenda is 190 Grand Ave, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to demolish the existing 9-bedroom house and to construct a new single-family house with an attached garage, porches, stairs, patio walls, sitting area, install a new Title V sewage disposal system, paver and paved driveway, flagpole, 105 linear feet of single-rail cedar fence at edge of dune, AC units, outdoor shower, utilities, native tree and shrub plantings, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, one quick thing before Jeff starts. You have two letters in front of you that came in late today that we were requested to make sure that you all received. There is another letter that is trapped in the General Conservation Commission mailbox that I was not able to retrieve today regarding this property, and I will forward that all to you and put a copy of that one in the file tomorrow.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Ryther. Bob Ullman just asked if we could get a copy of those letters.
Absolutely,
At
yep,
some
they came
point.
in late today, and Bob, I can just forward you the one that's trapped. As soon as I can get it out of the general email, I'll forward it to you as well.
You have a copy of the ones that you do have to give us?
Yes, right here. You can have my copies.
Okay, well, I'm Jeff Ryther with BSS Design representing Steve and Deborah Reichel. This is at 190 Grand Ave. This is the site of an existing 9-bedroom, 2.5-story house. It's quite large. I think some of you know where this is. Right at the corner of Knott Road and Grand Avenue in the Heights, Falmouth Heights. This is a house reconstruction project. We're proposing a house that meets all the local zoning regulations. And I'd like to go through just the resource areas on the lot. We have Vineyard Sound, which is land under the ocean. We have a nice wide coastal beach, coastal dune. We have a little bit of salt marsh. This is a little tag of marsh. It's off of Little Pond. The inlet's over here to Little Pond. Then we've got the buffer to that shown. That buffer, by the way, is off the lot. And then the whole site is in the A zone. There is a velocity zone here on the beach with the 25-foot offset shown here. The most landward resource area is the coastal dune. So that's been flagged and shown here in a heavy pen weight. And then I've offset that 50 and then again 50 for the A buffer and the B buffer. So the project is in mostly the B, but a little bit of A here. Again, this is a reconstruction, so we'll be tearing down the existing house. It does have a basement, so that'll be removed and filled. This new foundation will be at grade, at least the slab. It will have 4-foot frost walls all the way around. Flood openings, typical for A-zone construction. That's a flood zone, that is, construction. It's similar in layout, sort of the old. It's got a garage on this end of the house, and then the main body here. The new house has more porches and a little more gracious than the sort of boxy old house there. The new house is a 6-bedroom. Again, the old house is a 9-bedroom. Our proposed septic for that is here in the front yard, beyond 100 foot from the coastal dune, underneath the proposed circular driveway. And this existing driveway, which is more ample than we have than the proposed, it wraps around the garage and then out over here. That'll be removed entirely. So basically, we're going to clear the site. No tree removal, just the excavation and a big lawn, basically. And we're going to protect that with the hay bales at this location. That's labeled limited work. This is a limited work for excavation, heavier equipment, and then there will be some planting outside of that and that little bit of fence work that was described in the introduction to this site. I forgot to introduce the rest of the team here. We have John Dvorak, he's the architect. Here in the second row, Bob Alman. Next to him, he's the attorney for the project. And Teresa Sprague did the planting plan, which I'm going to get to next, and then she'll come up and present that. A couple more things. The roof runoff is going to be contained into these dry wells. We show them wrapping around the house. Currently, there's no stormwater management for the roof runoff. It just goes down downspouts onto the ground. It doesn't cause any erosion. It's a very flat lot, really, but it does taper down here to the road. But up in here, it's very flat and surrounded by lawn. Here's a detail of that dry well. One other thing on the lot, it's not in any buffer zone, but it is in the flood zone, is the 2,000-gallon concrete water storage tank. This end of the house is going to be piped to that, and this will be our irrigation for our mitigation and for the lawn in the future. There is existing an irrigation system off the town water main. You'll see that here. It says irrigation boxes. I sort of highlighted that on the plan just so you know that there's existing system out there that feeds the lawn. So we'd like to maintain an irrigation system primarily working off the tank, but also still hooked into the town water system, if this runs out. Let me just go through a couple other things. In the mitigation calculations up here in the upper right of the plan, we basically have a balance in the A buffer of proposed versus existing. So you'll see that number is 0 for work in the A buffer. The difference is work in the B buffer. We are expanding the roof area, porch, and some backyard patio. And where is it back there? Well, over here, side yard, I guess. And that comes out to be 685 square feet of new impervious surface in the B buffer and through here. So we've shown mitigation at 2 to 1 in these two locations. And there's a plan for that in your file. And I'm going to talk to, You can ask Teresa Sprague any questions about that. She's going to come up here and explain what's going on in here and why she chose these particular shrubs and plants in this harsh moody area. Teresa?
Good evening. For the record, Teresa Sprague, Blue Flags Design. I put together the planting plan for this back dune area at 190 Grand Ave. So basically, as Jeff just stated, the site conditions here are very harsh. Wind, salt. My understanding from the property owners is also that the Coast Guard often does drills in this area. A lot of the plantings that they planted previously have suffered severe salt damage due to the water being kicked up and thrown onto the site. The coastal dune is actually in really good condition. I'll show a photograph of that here. And it's really playing a huge role in protecting this particular site. I'm sure you're all aware that the area right next door, which is town property, has suffered severe erosion. When I was out, the day that I was out and took these pictures, just to the east, the area where the town parking lot is and the beach was severely eroded. So the dune area in here is actually in really healthy condition with some good dune grass, mostly beach grass in this area. At least that's all I observed at the time we were out there, which was January. So the proposed mitigation area is approximately or exactly 1,370 square feet. We are proposing to remove, there's two areas, one to the east and one to the west, on the western property line and the eastern property line. Let me just turn that back around. On the western property line, we're looking at 590 square feet of mitigation, and on the east, 780 square feet of mitigation. One of the opportunities here is that the mitigation area on the western property side actually abuts a mitigation area on the abutting property. So this area here has been previously planted on this property as mitigation. So we have an opportunity to make a little bit of a connection there. Likewise, on the eastern property boundary, there's an existing vegetated area that I'm showing in green right here on this plan. It's mainly rugosa rose. There is some bittersweet in there, and we would like to very selectively treat that bittersweet with a wetland-approved tricloper-based herbicide to prevent it from overcoming the mitigation plantings that we're proposing. Basically, we're proposing to remove the turf that's currently within that area, and the reason that I'm strongly recommending removing the turf is because in the past, when we've planted directly into turf, we've had a lot of issues with the shrubs being overcome and sort of crowded out by some of the more aggressive cool season European pasture grasses like velvet grass. Requires a lot more weeding. It's actually been, in my experience, better to remove the turf and either reseed the area with a native warm and cool season grass mix or plug the area, which is what we're proposing to do here. So we're looking at 6 cedar trees within the outer buffer zone B. And, 6 trees total. 2 of those will be within buffer zone A as part of the mitigation plan, and they're along the western property boundary here. Again, we're proposing to use smaller sized trees. Here we have a 5 to 6 foot B&B, simply because the site conditions are really harsh, and I think it's going to be really difficult to get plantings established in this area. I think temporary irrigation is going to be necessary. I think the cedar trees may need to be irrigated slightly longer than we typically irrigate in a mitigation planting area, simply because of the wind and the salt. And I also think that in situations where the Coast Guard is practicing, like has been reported to me, I haven't experienced it, that the trees may need to be rinsed occasionally to prevent desiccation. The species that were chosen as typical back dune plant species, bayberry, which has done very well on the abutting site, beach plum, which we know back dune species. Additionally, we're proposing some Rus aromatica, fragrant sumac, and Comptonia, also back dune species, very salt tolerant. And then as far as ground cover, enhancing the ground cover with a mix of little blue stem, Pennsylvania sedge, switchgrass, and some dune wildflower species to just add some habitat value, including butterfly weed, some asters, Baptisia tinctoria, which we've used down on Beach Street, so in this direct area, and seaside goldenrod. If we could also, once the turf is removed, immediately seed, and I would recommend just using little blue stem, Deschampsia flexuosa seed mix here. But I can answer any questions about planting and the proposed mitigation plantings.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with Teresa and then I'll go to Jeff.
Okay.
The Coast Guard made the plantings die?
I'm only reporting to you
Okay.
what was reported to me.
The two
Apparently,
mitigation cedars,
yeah,
it looks like they're gonna be part of a screening, so
They-
they're not gonna be touched. They're not gonna be pruned to be a screen.
absolutely not. And I've already also recommended to the clients that sourcing plant material is going to be hugely important on this site. So northern grown cedars only, none brought up from Georgia like you typically find in commercial nurseries around here, will be ultimately important here. And not to be pruned, to be planted and to be left to grow into their natural shape. And of course, we know that there's going to be some wind pruning. I've certainly spoken with the property owners.
It just seems a little,
Well, I think,
once they're screening that thing, their landscapers are gonna go all the way to the end. So, I'd like to see those just placed somewhere where they wouldn't, end up being part of that hedgerow.
meaning the two A-zone cedars.
And just one other question.
Sure.
At 1,300 square feet of mitigation plantings,
Yeah.
if you plant them 3 feet on center with shrubs, are your proposed 70 shrubs going to cover that entire area?
The proposed 70 shrubs, that
That's
spacing
if
is
the board
done.
allows you to use the sweet fern.
Yeah,
So,
right, that spacing is done at 3 to 4 foot on-center spacing. So using a multiplier between .06 and .11 is.
so
what
that
we came up
70
with.
shrubs is going to fill that whole area. So
This-
the grasses and forbs do not calculate into that mitigation
I
area.
have not calculated the
Okay.
grasses and forbs, but just want to make sure that there's a solid ground cover layer here.
Oh, no, I understand that,
Okay.
especially since you're taking out the thing. I just want to make sure that you know
Yes.
how I feel about
I do.
using grasses and forbs as part of your mitigation.
Yeah, no, but I
Um,
do think, just on a side note on that, I do think they're going to be hugely important here. Like, for instance, switchgrass, little blue stem, those
You
root
can use it
systems.
as a ground cover, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think
10,
it'll-
12, 16 feet deep, they play a huge part in
That's
erosion
fine.
prevention.
They cannot be counted as a mitigation. The
Right.
board typically likes to see a woody mitigation.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
And
Yep.
they'll need to talk about using sweet fern. Sweet fern on the site on Beach Street, we know it's stressing over there.
I think as
those
long as
par-
it's not hit with a weed whacker, it's perfectly fine.
They'll need to decide that, so that it might go back to a mix of the bayberry. I
that's
know
fine.
you're proposing the fragrant sumac, which is the really low-growing sumac.
Yes,
um,
it is.
They'll talk about that. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that the 70 plants stay there.
Yes.
And that is it for the plantings. Just, the board can discuss the placement of those cedars. I just see that, in a year or so, just
Right.
becoming part of that big hedgerow
Mhm.
and being pruned into a hedge. And,
Right.
that's not the purpose of having
Of
those
course.
there.
Yeah, no, we understand that. I think regardless, they would like to have a little bit of screening between the neighboring properties, so I think they'd like to propose to
No,
have
absolutely, and
those
they're
trees there.
doing that with the
Right,
multiple other
trees going up.
trees going
yes.
up there.
Yep.
The only other question, and maybe you can answer it, maybe Jeff can. Jeff, you have this area called sitting area wall on the plan, and there's a little, is that a fire pit or a bench in the corner of that?
Fire pit.
Let me go back to my. outdoor fireplace with a
Okay.
bench out front of it.
And the sitting area itself is is that a lawn?
That's just lawn.
It's
Then
just lawn, it's not gonna be turned into patio? no?
nothing, no?
Okay, I'm just curious, I wanted to know if that was factored into your mitigation calculations or not.
The wall and the fireplace are, yes.
No, I know, but I'm talking about between the
Oh, and here, no,
fireplace.
that's just gonna be all lawn with an opening here. You know, out there, there's quite a bit of wind, and they're just trying to find these niches around the house to get out of the wind outdoors, and so that's what John has come up with. I don't know if John needs to come up, but I think that's...
No, I just wanted to know if it was lawn or patio in there, that's all.
Right.
Because it doesn't look like it's part of the whole calculation, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, and at first I thought you were moving closer to the resource area than the present primary structure, but you have a shot off of that, what is that? The Bluestone Walk? At 33?
There's a stoop that's off of the house in concrete, that's the closest, I don't know if everybody can hear me or not, but that's the closest to the resource area.
that
That's
dune.
33 feet, and then there's new steps pulled back at 38 feet.
No, I'm talking that corner patio, you've got
Over
it
here?
34. Yep.
Yes, 34 there on that corner of that patio, but right here on the existing concrete stoop is 33. So that's why I dimensioned those. The existing is drawn a little bit lighter weight text, so you can tell the difference between proposed and
Oh, no, I just,
existing
it's-
dimensions here.
okay, all right.
A couple of things I forgot to mention, I just want to bring it up while I'm here. I did mention about the 6-bedroom septic. It's replacing the 9-bedroom cesspool system, which is, there's one here and one out back here near the dune. I forgot to mention that. So these cesspools will be removed as well. And the overhead utilities are going to be replaced by going underground off of this pole. And you'll see that there's telephone, electric cable, TEC labeled. All right, so I forgot to mention that. And one other thing is the overall project with the new house reduces the lawn area by 4,000 square feet. So I don't know if that'll help or not, but we
Is it
think
being
it's an
taken
overall
up with
improvement.
structure?
Pardon me?
Is it being taken up with structure?
Well, part of it's structure and part of it's,
The driveway?
there's a little bit less driveway. There's these two mitigation areas and this area here, which is all lawn now. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, but just it's a fact about the project.
I have one other question, Jeff.
Yeah.
Do you have to go to the engineering department for that driveway?
Yes.
Have you gone to
Well,
the
the
engineering?
contractor will be going, that's the contractor's permit.
Okay,
And right now, you know, just we did this because of safety. Right now, they have an exit that comes out where am I? Right here,
well, that corner's dangerous.
and this
no
is pretty
matter-
dangerous. People come around
yeah,
this
that
corner,
corner.
they're cruising.
Yeah,
and,
so that's why I'm wondering how they're
And
gonna
so
feel
what we
about
did is
that.
we wanted it in the center here so we can see both ways, and pulled the hedge back on this side so we can look down at the traffic, because they do move along here pretty quick.
Oh, absolutely.
And so.
Okay, if the engineering department wants you to revise that, you'll need to come back, talk to me, see what we'll have to do to do that. I'm not quite sure how they're gonna feel about that driveway. I mean, the one there now, you're right, it's a little hairy in the summer. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Right, before I poll the board, I want to let the audience know, I know there's got to be somebody here that wants to speak to this. I'm going to poll the board and get their questions addressed, and then I will also ask people in the audience. I don't want you to think that I'm forgetting anybody. You guys all set? I'm going to start with Courtney this time. Do you have architectural service?
We didn't file architecturals. We do have front elevation, if you'd like to look.
personally would like to see architectural standards.
Yeah, speech.
This is John DeBorzak. I'm John DeBorzak Architect, LLC.
John, if you present those to the board, you'll need to leave a copy with us for the open meeting. Sorry.
Do you mind if it's attached to a board?
I'd prefer not. If you could submit a copy of the architecturals,
Oh, sure.
that would be great.
Okay.
Okay. Only because I need it to fulfill the requirement.
With respect to the architecturals are still a work in progress. With respect to the overall plan, the elevations are developed as the plans are developed, and a lot of that takes place after we hear from you. But what I've done is developed the elevations that I think that most people are going to be interested in, which are the street elevations. And these are what we've come up with. This is the elevation from Grand Ave. You have the main body of the house, and then what I've done here is it's illustrated as one big elevation, but in reality what happens is this garage wing rotates 60 degrees. So at this point, if you can imagine the building hinges. So it's kind of a courtyard setup. Tried to pick up a lot of classic shingle style details that would be consistent with the neighborhood as far as materials, material selections. I have a lot of respect for the house that's there now and also for the neighborhood, and it's my intent to try and honor that as best I can and still maintain my client's requests. The other elevation is actually the elevation as viewed from Bristol Beach. And on that side of the house, we have a wraparound porch. It's broken up, it breaks up the height of the building. The overall height of this building is roughly 2 feet higher than what's there now. Most of that is because the new building has to be elevated to be out of the flood zone. And given the fact that, seawater rise, all the things that you guys are concerned with, I think it's important that we do that with this sort of investment at this point. So we're proposing to raise that another 2 feet, which I think is a good thing. And then also on the back of the house, right now the grade pitches into the building itself, which is causing all kinds of problems from a maintenance standpoint, water in the basement, that sort of thing. So that's the elevations, and I've also done one other just graphic representation here. I'll show what the property would look like from the parking lot at Bristol Beach. What I've done is I've taken that the side elevation and laid it on over the top of the existing house as best I could. And the only thing you're not seeing is the angled garage that would be going away from you. It would be living. It's actually at a steeper angle than what's there now, so it'll be well way back here. You can kind of see where the existing house is right now. So that's all I have. Any questions?
If I may, for the benefit of the people in the audience.
Sure.
Could you just hold them up so they can get a view of it?
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Ed.
View from Bristol Beach.
And John, again, if you could just get me a whatever you have, including the layout. Just, I'm more interested in the patio and everything. That would be great, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
As lovely as your boards are, I don't have any pictures.
I'd pull them off of here, but I don't think you'd like the
No.
result.
Courtney?
You mentioned that the grade pitches from the shoreline back toward the house,
Correct.
and that's why you're raising it?
Well, it's one of the reasons.
Yeah, and does that suggest that there's dune growth there? Is that what's going on? Is that why that's happening? And if that's the case, is that something that we should look at in terms of whether we permit this?
That I'm not sure about.
Courtney, here's some older shots of behind the house. Taking a couple of years ago.
Maybe Tom is better,
So
yeah.
that's the back of the house.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so you've got to, and that's what I'm concerned about there. You want to speak to that, Tom?
I think it's Jeff.
I mean, I'm sorry, Jeff?
Older wall.
Right, well, I think we're talking about this area back here towards the landward limits of the dune. Is that correct? I think John's talking about right in here where the bluestone walk is. It's virtually just flat right there. And so we thought we would just, put a spot grade of 11.7 where it's, basically, you see the 11-foot contour is already going through there. We just wanted to, at the base of the steps, just bring it up a little bit and grade that out instead of having a flat backyard. I don't know what you're looking at in those photos, but this is all lawn, mowed lawn around here. I think that you're saying is it doing well? I think I had it delineated quite well. One thing I do want to bring up is there used to be this wall. It's still there. There's a wall here, and over time the wind has blown the limit of the dune to where it is now. But this is definitely lawn right here.
I'm just wondering how dynamic this is.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that the lawn is holding a lot of that, but every time there's a storm, that sand blows up on the lawn and becomes part of the buildup, the grass holds it and so forth. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but it's a concern, that's all.
Yeah.
You're
Well, I
concerned with the
can add that
vibration of the dune.
this dune is very thick. I went through it and looked at it, and it's you can walk through it, but it's definitely a tall grass. It's not sparse at all. So I wouldn't think too much is coming through, but I
That's
can't
fine. No
say it
other
doesn't
questions.
blow off the beach across in a real strong wind.
Courtney, I'll take those.
You're up, Mike.
The, the improved sanitary system, moving it back is an improvement. And two, I believe the groundwater flow is clearly discharging towards the bay, not towards the pond, so that any loading is headed in the right direction. So the two are removing the septic sand, placement of the beds, the new beds, I think are improvements, clearly. Picking the house up has its problems, but it's clearly is going to benefit from potential storm. You're going from 9 bedrooms to 6.
Correct.
So with all those positive things, I guess I got a couple little things to pick at, and it's really kind of trivial because of the magnitude of the project, but your access to the beach, those existing steps are being moved closer to the dune?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to bring that up. Currently, there's a set of steps that
Yeah.
it's been there for quite a long time, and we're going to dispose those and then move over to the other end of this little cut area.
Yeah, you
where
had
the
them flagged
beach
pretty
reaches up.
nicely in the field. You had it flagged pretty nicely in
Oh,
the
yeah.
field. Thank you.
And so that'll keep it, well, within their rights to move the steps more than 10 feet from the lot line. So, yeah, that's an improvement as well, I think, you know. It's right here, this is right into the dune grass and some of the new shrubs next door.
Tying those new
So-
shrubs into the existing on the
Yeah,
the
that'll be
west
tied
property
in.
will be with another improvement.
Yeah?
I'm good.
Ed? Yes, I would like to talk a little bit about the irrigation issue and a water storage tank. And I want to bring that up because two things happened recently which will have impacted my view on irrigation systems and lawn and whatnot. The two new things that have developed over the last several months. First, back in November, town meeting passed a new regulation in town, a bylaw, I guess, limiting the application of fertilizers throughout the town, and particularly in waterfront properties. Teresa, I'm assuming you are aware of that new regulation. I think it's important that all property owners on the waterfront are aware of this because it impacts how they might want to be taking care of their property. So that's the first thing that came up. And the second thing that came up was a letter to the editor of the Enterprise back in January, written by a gentleman sitting in the audience tonight, Mr. Michael McGrath, a town engineer. And Mr. McGrath has pointed out that, yes, we have a lot of problem in town with nitrogen migrating through the groundwater into our coastal ponds. And the town could be faced with some astronomical bills, price tags to try and remediate these issues. Well, Mr. McGrath pointed out that it is possible to pump that water with a well and use it as part of your irrigation system. And in fact, it may be a way of applying nitrogen to lawns and shrubberies and whatnot on the property, which would not be limited by our bylaw. So I think it's sort of, there are some things happening here which are, very beneficial, I think, to mitigating the nitrogen problem, but at the same time giving people an opportunity to get some nitrogen on their property. So, with that background, I'm looking, and you're planning an irrigation system here. I'm looking at the plans, and they do show a water line, but you don't show the water line coming to the holding tank there. I do see something about you want to connect it to the downspouts on the house. And what I don't see here is anything about a well system, and I would just like to suggest that maybe you want to consider and take a look at the possibility of an irrigation well, which would lift up some of that migrating nitrogen in the groundwater and could be absorbed in the plantings and the grass area. So I'm making that suggestion. I do believe we're going to be having some discussions in a couple of weeks about our regulations and land subject to coastal storm flowage, and I might be bringing this issue up. It is not something we have addressed to date in our regulations, but I do believe it's something this commission should be talking about, and I will be proposing it, and I will be bringing it up in a couple of weeks when we do have this discussion. So, you don't have to do anything there, I'm just making some suggestions that I think it might be worthwhile considering.
I can say that we did discuss this with the owner and the architect and I, and they were saying, well, could we put a well on the lot? And there is a regulation that in this town to be at least 50 feet from a lot line, and we have to be the same distance from the SAS, soil absorption system. And so that means it would have to be in the backyard, and we thought that was going to get a little close to the, to the saltwater body, so we, without even testing it, we kind of just said, well, we've got salt water here, salt water there, well in the middle. I'm not sure if that's going to work.
Salt water in it?
Well, perhaps,
Yeah.
and so we just said, well, let's go with the tank then. And so, I know it's not plumbed, it's sort of, early, we're in the design phase of this, and that's, you know, the excavation for that is understood, I think. And there would be a pipe or two off of it, of course. But, you know, there's going to be a lot of excavation within this limited work line, so. I don't know if that needs to be detailed. I do have a little, this is John Dvorak gave me this today. Just, it's a rainwater filter diagram, but it kind of explains, you know, what we're up to. I think you can understand this diagram. It's basically, you know, filtering it, then goes to the tank, and then there's a pump in the tank. And when it comes down, then town water kicks in. That's basically what you're looking at there. But it's not fully designed. It will probably take a little mechanical engineering, and I haven't gone there yet. But
So it's a supplement to town water.
well, it would be this used first. I can say that the end of the house that we want to hook in is here. To fill that tank would be about a 2-inch rainstorm, or equivalent of that. And then, you know, we didn't want to put the whole house on it because it would just fill it right up and overdo it. So.
I just encourage you to give it some more thought. I understand what you talk about with the siding problems and the salt water issue.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you, Ed. Tom?
No questions.
The portion of the sitting area wall, what's the height of that? With the fireplace structure and such? Is that looking from one of the elevations, it
We
looked
don't
like...
have it on that particular architectural elevation. I don't think I've discussed that detail with John, but I think he can give you.
Yeah, I can talk about it. It's the, this wall and this wall are going to be approximately 3 feet high. They're going to tie into the height, because the house itself is going to have stone veneer along the base of the foundation. So it's going to tie in to that stone veneer. So you're roughly going to be about 3 feet right there, around the
Do you
L.
plan on having any other
Screening.
screening on top of the wall?
On top of the wall, no. Plantings in front of it, for sure.
Okay.
You know, the goal of that is to create a wind buffer and privacy, actually, from this side, in a place where they can go when the wind's coming out of the southwest hard. They can go around the side and still be in the sun and be out of the wind. So that was kind of the goal of creating that little niche around the side. For them, having lived there for a while, they found that to be pretty important.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay.
The irrigation tank, historically, cisterns reappear in a different fashion. Collecting rainwater is not a bad thing. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't make it so complicated it becomes a mechanical nightmare. All right, there's some real simple floats that work, low maintenance, and they, just don't overthink the wheel. Although this is a very substantial change, the elevation height difference, you made mention of it, from the old structure to the new structure, is only 2 foot at its...
Well, you can see on the site plan the difference in elevation there. I have both shown. Existing is 12.5, proposed is 14.37, so it's basically a 2-foot elevation change in the first floor.
But the overall structure,
The overall
Ridge,
structure,
roof.
well, they more or less match, but by raising the whole first floor, it ends up being 2 foot higher than the existing, still 1 foot under the maximum. Is that right, John?
okay,
The
that was,
maximum being 35?
30, yes, 34 feet.
34.
okay, that was for the benefit of those who are not looking at our plans right now, because I'm sure that may be
I'm not sure I
area of
understand.
question. Just the overall height of things. I have an inclination that might be something brought up, so I just wanted to get that out
Right,
here.
I understand. Well, there's others right across the street, and I know that's right up
I'm
to
not
35
worried
feet,
about
so-
others across the street, Jeff.
Yeah,
I'm talking about this project
yeah.
right now.
My first comment was that this project meets the current zoning bylaw to the
And-
T, so I wanted that to be said first thing. so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At this point.
If you had not said that, Jeff, I was going to ask you.
Yes, Ed.
If I may, along the same lines, there's a large group of people here. I'm not sure what project they're interested in, but if it's this one, there may be concerns that this is a much larger house, if it is in fact than what is there currently. But I think everybody needs to know that this is a conservation commission, and our purview and our responsibility is limited to conservation issues. We do not regulate sizes of houses. We do not regulate the height of structures. And if anybody has any concerns about those issues, you need to address some different boards and commissions in town. It is not something that we get into.
Thank you, Ed. At this point in time, I'd like to open it up to the audience if anyone would like to speak about this project. You have to get up and identify yourself for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Bristol Donnellan. I live down the street at 70 Minot. I apologize for my appearance today. I've been digging in the dirt all day, trying to make the house look better. I'm the great-grandson of B.B. Bristol, the brother of E.H. Bristol, who built the existing structure. I grew up going to that beach as a family favor to my family. So I know the house well, I know the beach well. I'm just curious as to what the ultimate fate of the property is, and that's the only reason for me being here. But what Mr. Bird said about is the dune growing sparked my interest. And I can tell you that the dune is growing, and I'll tell you why. I was born in 1963, and we have family photographs. Every year, we would pose in the summertime. I have 7 siblings. And beginning, I want to say 1955, and right up through 1975, there's, I think there's yearly photographs of all 8 little Donnellans every year, and my mother and father, posing on what used to be a seawall. You can't see it anymore, but it's very much like the concrete seawall that you see on Falmouth Heights. Used to be able to see it on the entire property.
It's depicted as buried wall.
Yeah, it's buried wall. All right, so it's now buried. It never used to be buried. So we would pose on that wall. We had great fun as little kids, freaking out our parents, my mother especially, by taking running leaps off the lawn, jumping as far as we could onto the beach, and dropping in the process 3 or 4 feet onto the surface of the beach. And when I got good at catching a frisbee, we'd do that and do tricks doing that. You can no longer do that because it's now one continuous dune, and that is built up over time. And I guess what happens is every year the grass grows a little bit, and the lawn now has built up, and that's what's happening. The lawn is now, it's still there, but the lawn grows to the surface of the new surface every year. And we used to have a little shortcut from the Bristol Beach parking lot through the Bittersweet and the Rosa Begosia. We had a little pathway because we didn't like to go all the way around. And it's since grown over, long since grown over. But now you would have to go up and over a little hill to get there. There was never a hill there. So it's growing, and it's been growing for years. So, and I can provide the photographs if you like. I can just tell you the anecdotes. Anybody who's lived there for years will probably confirm that story. If you're interested as the Conservation Commission as to whether or not that dune is growing, And it is a healthy dune, and it's growing from beyond that point onto Bristol Beach, all the way over to Marion Papazian's property. It's a healthy dune. And it's growing up all the way onto the lawn. So that's my answer to that piece of everything you've been talking here about. Everything else, I'm sorry to see the Bristol's no longer owning the property, but I've made my peace with that. And I'm happy to see somebody else trying to do something nice with it, and I wish them Godspeed. I just hope they do it in a way that, doesn't interfere with the natural beauty and the long-term ecosystem associated with the property. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you do want to submit your photographs, you can always send them to my office later. If you want to submit, if the record's closed tonight, if you want to just hold that space, if you want to submit them, I'd be happy to take them for you. You can send them to, if you want to just email them, J. McKay, JMC, KAY, at Falmouth, Mass.
If there's anyone else who would like to make a comment while that discussion is being up, please go up to the podium
Mr.
and
Chairman,
announce yourself.
We'll just allow these, since they don't have them right now, if this gentleman wants to submit them into the record, we can put them in.
That's
when they're
perfectly
emailed.
fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll give a copy to Bob if he would like them.
I'm Regina Walsh Wagner. I live on Pennsylvania Avenue, but all the people in this area, not all of them, but most of them I've grown up with in the summers. Some are down here since '44 because the Mara Vista house blew into Great Bay at that hurricane. So we then moved to Pennsylvania Avenue, and I have that beach house. I'm tightening it up, and it's still a dear home. It's a modest home. It's a little Dutch colonial. But I never expected to make it bigger or to push my neighbors around or anything like that. So, and all the things have been in thinking of the environment and the neighbors. So I'm only here because my friends asked me if I would come. They're all in Florida, and so I will be glad to attend any other meetings that, before they get home, and that would be great. I'm just concerned that it's a bully situation. And of course, you have to fight one thing after another, argue to have it reasonably done for the neighbors. I know Lance has a big problem with his situation. So I thank you.
Okay.
Here for others.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Lance Cussell. I reside at 189 Grand Avenue. My house is exactly across the street, and I'm here to represent 350 years of collective neighbor experience with this corner of the universe. We've been there for 60 years, and the Smiths, the Santasarios, the Rowlands, the Aherns, and the Papazians, just a handful, represent 350 years, and many of them are here in the room today. What the plan doesn't show is the, I think, very finely wrought and delicate ecosystem of man and nature that surrounds this most significant parcel in Falmouth Heights. As it stands, the house presently is the largest house in Falmouth Heights and sits on the largest single plot or parcel in Falmouth Heights. And what the plan doesn't really bring to life is the fact that it is the most public of corners in our neighborhood. It abuts the Bristol Beach property and the Bristol Beach parking lot, which Brian can tell you was given by his ancestors to the town. And this house was maintained for years as a very open and public plot where people could see through, and rabbits and foxes and all the good stuff could walk through unfettered. And I'm very concerned to be here today again in front of this board. We met in 2006 for the first time when the property changed hands. And unfortunately, the present owner seems to have a indifference to the neighborhood in terms of what his plans are, and an indifference to the environment. Because at that time, before even living in the house for one night, the present owner notified us through registered mail that he proposed a 6-foot stone-faced masonry solid wall to encircle not just that parcel, but the adjoining parcel, which he's since sold off. And we found that not only to be unfriendly, but environmentally dangerous. And at that time, the Conservation Commission, Mr. Byrd and Mr. Schmidt may recall, absolutely referred the plan back for adjustment, and we wound up with a green screen now that's now 9 feet tall hedgerow that has now cut off pedestrian views through to Bristol Beach and the vineyard, and we really mourn that loss. But I can tell you that this plan today, collectively, we are mortified and appalled at the scale and the possible impacts environmentally to the area. This is a sensitive corner, ladies and gentlemen. You can see it's just a stone's throw away from salt marsh, from public beaches, from the property's own private beach. And to Mr. Byrd's point, I can also attest that that dune has been growing. That lawn has shrunk significantly in my own lifetime. I too used to play on those lawns, and I can tell you that they're mowing a lot less of it year by year. And that is a good thing for the neighborhood, because Bristol Beach itself is eroding. And we really have seen quite a lot of erosion at the public side of the beach, at least 20 to 25 feet, because I know this for sure, because like Brian, I have childhood stories. I used to play in certain jetty formations that have long since been covered in water now. Stones I used to pretend were a dashboard and an automobile have been buried for years by the shore, the water coming closer to the shoreline. So we're losing our beach. This is our natural resource that we try to protect and love each year through storms and nor'easters and hurricanes and other travails. What we can tell you is that the configuration of the property in its present state has worked very well for that corner in terms of storm flowage impacts and other environmental issues, because of the fact that it is configured, in its present state. What happens now when the building splays out in a V to cover twice the square footage and twice as big a part of that lot? And I wonder, of these calculations even anywhere in the materials that have been filed, how do we know that the square footage is only 10.5% of the lot? I'd like to see those calculations. I'm also concerned about these zones. What maps were used in drawing these particular plans? I see no citation on the map itself of the plan of which FEMA maps we're talking about. Which year map was this based on? My understanding is the current maps are from 1999. Is that correct? Does the board know? Well, if you go to the filing, it says that the FEMA flood insurance rate map community plan so-and-so is from May 15, 1986. Okay, well, how does it match up with the plan from Mr. McGrath in 2006? I'd like to know which maps he used to do a site plan. I mean, do they correspond? I mean, I've got to believe, with all the kinds of beach erosion that we've been experiencing here, that these velocity zones are subject to shift. And I want to be sure that we are up to date in making any affirmation of this plan, that these maps are indeed the correct maps that should be used, and that there's no correspondence error using old maps or outdated materials in drawing these velocity zones and flood zones. This is sensitive. Why? Because I'm just, a short distance away, and I'm concerned every night that the next 100-year flood is coming. And I want to know how this new building is going to divert waters into my neighbor's basement, my basement, and so on and so forth. Is the commission aware that new FEMA maps are due to be released next month?
Actually,
Yes.
we are. I'd like to respond one other thing. I'm not having anybody answer some of that question specifically because the engineer is going to get up and he's going to give testimony on what he used for that plan, all right? That's where you're going to get your answer for that first round of questions. And yes, we are familiar with the updating of the FEMA maps. That has been discussed by several engineers in front of this board. We don't have that compiled information yet.
Okay, but I'm just wondering how anything could possibly be approved on this site until such time as the next map comes out.
The existing maps are not solely used on this site. They are used for our entire community. All right, the FEMA maps that are being used by these engineers, you know, this isn't, I can appreciate your concern for this parcel, but that concern can be expressed by anyone on any FEMA map. The way you're discussing this, you put anything that's out there in question, and that's why the engineer is going to be able to give you an answer.
Okay, great. Well, it's just my understanding, sir, that the map citation is supposed to be on the site plan. And finally, you know, I'd like to just mention a bit about unintended consequences of substantial changes to very sensitive parcels of land. I brought up a picture of our neighborhood, and you can see, I'll pass it around to the board. We're on top of one another. This is an ecosystem, and it's not just nature, it's man and all the behavior that goes with it. You want to build a house that's twice the size, spread out twice the size of the on the lot, there's going to be impacts, and I'm concerned. We talked about, or I heard discuss mitigation plantings, and the idea was, you know, if you're going to make changes, you have to have some plantings, but also I heard the motivation being for privacy. Well, you know, since that 9-foot green screen has been erected, they've certainly got plenty of privacy on what is the most public parcel of land in Falmouth Heights, wedged between two public beaches and a public parking lot and a main thoroughfare for walkers and dog walkers and runners and pedestrians who enjoy the scene. So more privacy, we lose more views and more of the heritage of that area of the world that we so cherish. It's nature we're losing. You might add a couple of trees, but yet others lose. So we hope that you're sensitive to not only the environmental impacts, but also the impacts that I've talked about, beach erosion from having a new geometry and new massing on the site, as well as the concerns of abutters who share hundreds of years of collective experience with a site as is, now to be changed forever.
This will be part of the record.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say, can we keep that, please?
Is there anything more that you'd like to discuss?
No, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would ask Jeff at this time if he could address the FEMA map question.
To give you the answer, it's in the notice of intent. There is this exhibit here of the firm, that's the flood insurance rate map by FEMA. So it's panel 11 of 13. It is dated May 15th, 1986. It's the map that we have to use today. We've looked at the map for, in fact, it's not coming out next month, but I understand it's been developed for quite a while, but they're not issuing it until summer of 2014.
May I just comment briefly that downstairs, the maps that are used that's on display for public use of the building department, down in the hallway, dated 1993.
Thank you. So, the 87, 93 maps,
I have, the map for this is May 15th, 1986. If there's something else out there, I'm just not aware of it, but I have looked at the one coming out here, which has been developed for a while, so I'm not sure why the delay, but it does have velocity zones here, and it has a V zone off to the side, very similar to this map.
I submit for the record notation that 99 paper maps are now those in effect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Courtney.
Jeff, I just want to follow on this dune thing. How did you delimit the edge of the dune?
Well, primarily we did some small test holes, certainly in the dune. It's been mowed up to the dune. There was some dune grass that was mowed. I have the flags on the lawn side of those. I don't know if anybody looked at it, but there was a little bit of mowing into that dune grass. So my line is not there. It's into the lawn some. Now, I didn't go looking to see if the whole backyard is dune. You know, before there was a single house out here, there was probably a lot of sand here before, so you may have some man-altered dunes that have been replanted and turned into a lawn for decades. I guess maybe the lawn did come down to that wall at one time. But, currently, the dune is here.
Mr. Ament, one moment, please. On your, Mr. Ament.
Thank you. I represent the applicant. I'm Bob Ament, a Falmouth attorney, and I have a few comments about a number of things that have been said, and I'd like to emphasize a couple of points. First of all, I don't have the slightest doubt that every one of you believes that Mr. Ryther has used the correct flood zone plan. However, we would like the opportunity to just submit evidence that makes that clear to you following tonight's hearing, even if you close it. There have been references to correspondence that isn't yet available you've received. There have been some things submitted to you tonight. If you close the hearing, we would at least, which we think you could, we would at least like the opportunity to submit.
Excuse me, Mr. Ament, would you mind speaking up a little bit? I'm getting a little old and slightly hard of hearing, and you're getting quieter and quieter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can appreciate your problem wearing hearing aids myself. I won't repeat everything I've just said, but I would like to make sure that we have an opportunity to at least provide written response to the materials that have been submitted tonight. Now, I'd like to emphasize a couple of things that are about the project, which are in response to issues that have been brought up or comments that have been made. First of all, there is no increase in impervious area whatsoever in the A zone. So that's 50 feet from the demarked limit of the dune. There's no increase in impervious area. The house, in fact, as proposed, is moving back from the dune, the areas of structure that are still closer to the resource area, and there's really very little of the house that's within the A zone buffer as proposed, and less than the existing house. But the areas that are there are mainly the patio and deck that are shown. Now, the current house has a full basement, and that will be completely eliminated. The flood zone elevation for the area is 12 feet. So to comply with your requirements, the house needs to be at 13 feet minimum first floor level. And the current house doesn't meet that. The new house will, and as was stated, the architects added a measure of protection by making the elevation first floor 14.37 feet. Now, the architect didn't discuss it. John Dvorak didn't, but he has put together a memo which describes the problems with the existing 9-bedroom house. It's in poor condition with dry rot present in many areas, and once the walls are opened up, they expect to find many more problems. Structural framing is undersized. The exposure of the house in its present location is difficult even by waterfront standards. Windows, doors, siding, insulation, electrical, plumbing, and heating system all need to be replaced. And when they're rebuilt, they all have to come up to code. The house essentially would need to be gutted. Now, as you know, once you do even a portion of that, 50% of the value of the structure, the owner is required to elevate the house. So the house must be lifted up and rebuilt. Now, the lawn area, which was concerned about, of course, an irrigation zone, but as was stated, the lawn area is being reduced by 4,000 square feet in that neighborhood. I forget the exact figure that was stated. As I just said, there's no increase in the A zone. In the B zone, that's the rest of the area of your jurisdiction, although, of course, the flood zone is the entire area's flood zone. But the buffer areas, the increase is shown to be 685 square feet. That's impervious area. It's partly because there's a significant area of driveway that goes around the house on the west side that's being eliminated. So we're not much of an increase in impervious area, and that's what's leading to 2-for-1 mitigation. And of course, all the mitigation is in the A zone. So there's no increase in the A zone, there's some increase in the B zone, twice that amount of mitigation planting being put into the B zone, so into the A zone, sorry. So when the house is rebuilt, and I'm skipping back a little bit to the construction, we've got to comply with today's standards, which include the wind-resistant windows and the elevation of the house and so on. So this house, all of which is required by state building code, and some of which is specifically required by FWR 10.38, the flood zone regulations of the wetland regulations. So these are significant benefits, as Mr. Powers has, I think, already alluded to for this project. And there are other benefits. There are no missing downspouts, no dry wells in the present house, both using the irrigation system and using dry wells. That's a big improvement on the lot. Now, Mr. Kussel has challenged some calculations done by Mr. Reither, which I have no doubt as a professional engineer he will stand by, and the use of the flood zone and so on. I don't know what Mr. Kussel's qualifications are. In his hyperbolic remarks, I mean, the largest house in the Heights. I'm quite sure that's not true. I'm thinking of specific houses I've been involved in and know the areas of them, but it's sort of irrelevant, whether it's a public lot per se, whether it's all irrelevant to you. Of course, it's surrounded by an ecosystem. And in a sense, not perhaps the sense you usually deal with, the whole Heights is an ecosystem, of course. The configuration that exists today, he says, has worked well. Why change it? I listened carefully to his remarks, and I've had at least the chance to read the letter he submitted to the board. For all the discussion of sensitive impacts and so on, he's provided no specifics, and he certainly has provided no expert evidence whatsoever of specific problems that will occur because of the construction of this house. He's concerned about unintended consequences, but it's complete speculation. And this project, replacing an existing project and not moving closer to the dune. I don't know what difference it makes at all, the construction of this house, removing the basement and so on, putting in 1,600 and some square feet of mitigation plantings, or more than that a bit. How is this going to adversely impact the dune. And what impact does this have to do on the loss of the beach, this project? I don't think there is any, but there are a lot of benefits that we have provided, and we are dealing with an existing situation and simply improving it. And the house complies in all respects, though it's not too relevant to this board, I think, to zoning. And there is no requirement to build this new house on this lot, which exceeds the lot size for lots even today in a residential C zoning district. There is no need to get a special permit from the Board of Appeals for this house. So, thank you for listening.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think just given the amount of information, I would love the architecturals for the record. There are letters that were submitted that are trapped inside our general mailbox. I got a new computer last week, so just working out the bugs. There are pictures that need to be submitted, and obviously the applicant's representatives would like to submit written comments regarding the written comments regarding the floodplain. We probably should continue this hearing.
Oh, before we even do that,
Okay.
I'd like to ask if, I saw the gentleman wanted to make another comment, and I went to Mr. Ament first. I'd like to get some more. I will definitely want to do that, and,
Too much outstanding information at this point.
right, if there's a comment that you'd like to make, sir, please.
Yeah, when we talked about the dune growth, I just had one other observation I'd like to make for Mr. Bird. Apparently in the plan, there's 105 linear feet of single split rail cedar fence being proposed right at the dune's edge. What might that be for? I'd submit that it has something to do with stopping the forward movement of the beach grass from occurring. That being said, I worry about in any storm, what happens to all that debris from a fence?
I can
Thank
just
you.
answer briefly. Actually, the purpose of the fence is to prevent what I think Mr. Ryther pointed out, which was mowing into the dune area. So we're proposing, in order to protect the dune grass, and as I pointed out earlier, it is, and certainly the property owners realize the important role that dune grass is playing in stabilizing the beach. And I think in the beach, and I apologize, I didn't realize it was called the Bristol Beach. There's just a small Google Earth image that there's literally no dune or beach grass or dune vegetation, mainly because it's a parking lot, which I think is playing a significant part in leading to the erosion that the neighbors pointed out is happening there. So the purpose of this single rail, split rail fence is literally just to prevent lawnmowers from moving into the dune area and mowing any beach grass and really protecting that dune system.
And how tall, how high, you know, is it?
Single rail, split rail is usually maybe 2.5 feet, 3 feet tall, max. So probably 2.5 feet range. Yeah, just to prevent lawnmowers from going in there.
Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to someone else for a moment, if anybody else has, and if it's new information, time is marching on, there's a lot here. I have a suspicion that there's going to be a continuance, so pertinent information, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. I am Greg Rowland. I am co-owner of a historic cottage that abuts the Bristol Mansion at 190 Grand Avenue. The property that I own is also across the street. It's actually this corner property in the corner of Collision and Grand. It is a property that is 3 lots that at some point were consolidated into 1 lot. It's characterized by a lot of open space. I think you're probably familiar with the area, so. I am in agreement, actually, with the attorney who spoke about this as essentially this is an opportunity for improvement, and I embrace the fact that something needs to be done with the Bristol mansion. It's in dilapidated condition, it's not to code, it has a basement. I think there's a lot of opportunity for something positive to happen with this property, and I think there's, I think maybe the discussion is about what the improvement might look like. And I represent the 4th generation in my family who's owned and enjoyed the cottage across the street there at 23 Elysian Avenue. I wasn't born in 1986 when the plans were FEMA plans that were in use, but a little bit before, and can remember, you know, many enjoyable summers adjacent to the Bristol mansion at Bristol Beach. The property that I'm at is characterized by open space. I'm essentially going to kind of review some of what was lost in the inbox and Concom. Just for the record, trapped.
I'll get it tomorrow.
Yep. So the area is characterized by open space. It's the cottage property that I have embraces a historic and sort of understated approach to seaside living. And the same approach in architecture and style exists in adjacent lots, including an identical cottage to mine, cottage style and floor plan right across the street here, that's at 19 Elysian Avenue. Typical fences in this part of the Heights are low post and beam style. They're inviting to views and neighborliness. I think there is a degree of collegiality in the neighborhood. And the openness of the Bristol property has traditionally echoed that approach, with no fences or privacy plantings traditionally. This openness has enabled a view from my lot that includes Martha's Vineyard across the water, and that was a view that my grandparents enjoyed as children, and that I hope my children, they enjoy today. I have renters, they're drawn to my cottage in the summer because of this understated and open style in the neighborhood, because of the wildlife and the natural habitat that's nearby, and the view across Vineyard Sound. It's not something that's taken for granted. I am concerned about the usage potential of an expanded Bristol structure and what impact that might have. The size of the new structure appears to dwarf the already large Bristol 9-bedroom home. Under the new plan, the lot coverage square footage will increase by over 85%, if I'm reading this correctly. The design of the new structure leads one to anticipate, and I can only speculate, but leads one to anticipate the potential for increased levels of human activity, noise, waste, and runoff, all of which are disruptive to the current patterns of avian and small mammal activity in the area. While it's unknown, certainly to probably all of us, and certainly to me, what kind of large events might happen at the enlarged mansion, it is clear that the new design will be able to accommodate increasingly expansive parties and gatherings for decades to come, with more noise and more traffic. So is this a departure from the current impact and the character of the property, and indeed the neighborhood in that part of the Heights as a whole? I'm concerned that it is. The new design, I think, has some really positive qualities, but I'm concerned about some things. The new design is going to provide my porch with a full frontal view up the driveway to the new, taller, mammoth mansion across the street, and I can't help but be concerned about the increased level of activity and its impact. The 9-bedroom space that's there in the Bristol seems already expansive, but the larger design clearly anticipates a need for more space, perhaps more occupancy. Furthermore, in the event of catastrophic flooding or storm damage, the slope and orientation of the driveway seems poised to wash debris across the septic field, across Grand Avenue, and directly into my yard. That said, I actually laud the design for taking into consideration a driveway orientation that is better as far as safety for vehicles getting on and off Grand Avenue, and the hedgerow that's brought back from the street. I think that's a real positive thing about the plan. And I realize that's not relevant to conservation, but just safety on the whole. It's a turn that's widely considered treacherous. So in sum, I just appeal to the commission to be mindful of the long-term effects that a change in the character and usage of this property, and this historic property, will have. I urge the commission to act conservatively with regard to local habitat, to open space, and to the issues raised by all the abutters who will be affected. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Seth, that's a copy of your letter. You can submit it for the record, please.
In addition to the
Well, it's the same one. I'll just get it in the email that we're continuing with.
Is there any other comments from the audience at this point in time? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Marion Papazian. I live at 200 Grand Avenue South. I live 2 doors away from Mr. Reichelt. My husband was the late Clemente Papazian, MD. I want to speak to the changes that have happened that impact all of us. The dunes are always in the state of flux. They change with each hurricane. Sometimes the whole dune gets wiped away. But the dune buys time, and that's very, very important. I have owned the house with my husband for 40 years. There have been a lot of changes in 40 years. We never had any harsh words with the Bristols in the length of time that we were their neighbors. But since the current, the man that's going to enlarge this house, there are unresolved issues. Mr. Reichelt encroached upon 10 feet of my land, which is still unresolved. The little old flags that were placed to establish the boundary lines were removed and new ones were put in. There was a huge boulder there, bigger than the present version of the Plymouth Rock. And that, when I wasn't there in the off-season, someone brought a crane and removed that huge boulder, which helped to establish the boundary line. There was total disregard of me and my property. This was the little house next door, which was my abutting property, was torn down, and presumably they were going to put it in the same footprint. And now 10 feet of my land is gone, and they've planted trees all the way on that boundary line. Mr. Reichelt has total disregard for abutters. It's important to have the dunes there, and because the dunes buy time, and if they alter that, then the safety of the houses abutting this is going to be affected, and I fear that. As for the fence they're talking about, I always thought that they would have, I was told I had to have a chain link fence to separate my property from the residence beach. But yet there's a wooden fence here that's being allowed on this, or being considered for this change. I don't want to hurt anyone. We all have to live together. We all enjoy the beach and Falmouth and all the good things. But I just make an appeal to you to look very carefully at what's being contemplated here, because when it comes into fruition, it's bigger than life. The photograph, the picture that they showed would look like a postage stamp that he's going to put up. It looks very small, but when it's all built, it may obstruct the view of others across the street. The house that he built next door to me, all of that was done when my husband had just died in Southern California, where he was in practice. I had to bring the remains back, and all of this was done when I wasn't here. And they knew that I wasn't in town, and they took full advantage of my absence to put in things that I wouldn't approve. I just ask that the houses up to now have been protected by the vineyard and by the vegetation, the dune grass, and that dune grass can go in a minute in a hurricane. It can just be undermined by one big wave, and then there's no dune. So it's important to maintain the dunes so that we're not put at more risk than is necessary, just for the bravado of making a bigger and bigger house and a bigger noise. Mr. Reichelt likes to do things in a big way. He has the biggest fireworks up until 2 and 3 in the morning, bigger than what the city of Falmouth has. So he likes doing things in a big way, and we don't want to dampen his enthusiasm. But at the same time, my 10-foot strip is still unresolved. There hasn't been proper setbacks. That boulder was removed, and all the little flags, those old yellow little flags, were removed, and new flags were put in. I thank you for your patience, and I hope all of this is resolved for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Is there any other testimony that wants to be heard from the audience?
I'd just like to respond to Attorney Ahmed's.
Okay, I'm going to, when you give testimony, you have to do it up at the podium. I am going to allow one more from you and one more from Mr. Ament, and I did not see anyone else raise their hand. Time marches on. I've got 2 other notices. This information is rehashing, and it's wearing me thin.
Okay.
And that's not good for anybody.
Just to Mrs. Papazian's point, I think we all should just exhibit great caution in reviewing these plans, and I think that the maps matter, the dates of the maps matter, calculations matter. I'm not impugning anyone's professional capabilities. However, I would just like to point out that on the submitted plan, we have denoted Minot Beach as the abutting property. It is, in fact, Bristol Beach, and Minot Beach is 4 miles up the road. So details matter, and I think accuracy should be held at the forefront in making a decision on as complicated and large-scale a plan as we have at hand. That's the point I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Attorney Ament.
Thank you. I have just one piece of new information. That is that the property that's immediately to the west of the locust that we're talking about tonight is no longer owned by Mr. Reichelt, and hasn't owned it for some time. I don't have the exact date to give you, but my understanding from the other consultants is that issues which have been raised regarding that property and the second to last speaker's concerns about her property have mostly arisen as a result of actions by the present owner of the property. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Courtney.
Real quick, to follow up on on your comment, Jen. Has the town approved the new driveway layout?
No, that's something that Mr. Rather said would happen during this construction process.
If we're going to continue this, I think
I will contact the
I would
engineering
like to have
department
that,
and have them look at it, yes.
I would like to have that confirmed and blessed off,
Yep.
so that we don't end up with an amendment later on, assuming the project is approved.
Jeff, submit your driveway plan to the engineering department. Thank you.
Ed, you have a comment?
Yes, two things. First, for Mrs. Papazian, you expressed a number of times concerns about the dune, and I would just like to maybe reassure you that there is no proposed change or altering of the existing dune system in what's been presented to us. And if it had been presented to us, I very much doubt that we would permit it. So I think you should feel comfortable that nothing done here on this particular project is going to alter the dune system.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
All right. And secondly, regarding the idea of continuing, I feel it is a good idea. Issues have been raised about the maps and whether the appropriate maps and the most up-to-date maps have been used in what's been presented to us. I don't feel completely comfortable with that issue, and I think we need more information on that. And therefore, for that reason, as well as those that you have mentioned, Jennifer, I would be very much in favor of a continuance and welcome input from all sources relating to the map issue.
Mr. Rather, what continuance date would you like? The 27th or of March? Is that too early for you? It's in 2 weeks. Everything would have to be in the office next Wednesday. That's architecturals and letters submitted regarding FEMA flood zone maps that you're using. And that will also give us some of the speakers time to submit some information if they would like.
I think we're going to need 3 weeks on this.
Okay. So you want the 3rd of April?
Yes, please.
Because after that, we skip to the 17th because of town meeting. So April 3rd, everything in the Conservation Department office by March 27th, everyone. Thank you.
I do have one comment, though, just about the flood zone. I will check this, but when we make this exhibit, we go to the website. This is not a picture snapped off of the flood map. It's actually going to the website and then using that. So I think I got it right, but, we're going to double check this.
Just double check, and that would be great, Jeff, if you could put that in writing for the record.
Yeah, okay.
Appreciate it.
I would
And
like-
get the driveway looked at
Driveway
by
submitted, yeah.
engineering for me, please.
I would like to entertain a motion.
Architectural.
I move to continue until March 27th.
Second.
No,
No,
April 3rd.
April 3rd.
April 3rd.
I'm sorry. April 3rd, where are they?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. One little comment something that just stuck in my claw. I appreciate everyone's testimony. This has been very productive, truly. Please do not think that we're disregarding anything when we don't respond, all right? It's not our point to answer some of your questions. That's why they're directed to the engineer. One of the things I can tell you is that even if this structure stayed in the same footprint, due to code enhancements, it would not be the same structure that was there. There is that threshold that mandates, that dictates all kinds of things. Time marches on. The Heights doesn't look like it did 60 years ago, and it doesn't look like it would 60 years from now. This project, from an environmental standpoint on this board, doesn't have a whole lot of issues, all right? It's not something that isn't approvable, all right? There may be minor tweaks on this, but this is something that does meet a lot of the regulation. I said, and it's it's something, there's gonna be some tweaks, there's gonna be some good information, but redevelopment of this lot will happen, whether it's in the footprint that was or one that will be. And I wish all the parties the best luck on coming to a good conclusion on that.
Thank you.
Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If there's any discussions, would you ask you to take them out in the hallway, because we still have quite a bit to go. All right, next on the agenda is Chappaquiddick Associates Road, West Falmouth, for permission for minor repairs of approximately 570 linear feet of stone riprap, the reconstruction of approximately 110 linear feet of stone riprap, roadway repair and timber stair reconstruction, including all construction access and the excavating, grading, and the associated restoration activities. I would like to remind the audience, please, that we are now into the next hearing, and that any discussion should be taken in the hallway, please. Thank you. Mr. McGrath.
My name is Mike McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and professional land surveyor, and my firm, Holmes McGrath, prepared the notice of intent that describes the repair work that's going to be, that we're asking for permission to do, that's basically protects Chappaquiddick Road. This is actually, usually, this is Chappaquiddick Road, and Associates Road is the loop. It's labeled Associates Road, which is another, there are some people who think this is Associates Road. But in any case, I think we all know where the site is. There's 570 feet of existing riprap that's going to be basically chinked. Chinking is just that there's voids have developed over time, and there is some evidence that there's holes forming at the top of the riprap. That generally means that the water is washing out soil particles. The easiest way to get this to stop is basically fill all the voids with stones that are basically triangular in shape or cross-section, and then hammered or levered into place. They have to be forced into place. There's a set of stairs there that are placed seasonally. We like to replace them with better stairs. What's not colored on the plan is that there's a concrete foundation that we would like to remove. The concrete foundation is a remnant of, it's in this location right here. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's pieces of a concrete foundation that vary in height. They're generally about, I would think, 2 foot high. The notice says that they will be taken down to within 12 inches of the surface. However, we showed that the portions up against the toe stones, we don't want to take that away. And then from a point here all the way around, if you've gone out there, this has been mortared riprap. And what's happened is it's come apart in one of the recent storms. So we give you a cross-section that shows you how it's to be repaired. What we like to do is bring the equipment out onto the shore in order to put the toe stones in. So we showed a construction access coming around here. We also showed that we may disturb, or most likely will disturb, the dune in this area, so we're showing this to be restored. So that's the point of coming down here and working solely in this area down here. Our experience is that the best possible riprap is when the excavator's on the tidal zone. He can see his work, he will also get it down deep enough. We also furnished the commission a series of aerial photographs showing that at one time there was a beach here. They actually called this Big Beach colloquially. And now, due to erosion, mean high water is hitting portions of this. So there's no Chapter 91 license for this, but we'll have to get one. There was no Chapter 91 license required when it was constructed. It's important that this be done because this is the only road out to Chappaquiddick. Are there any specific questions I can answer concerning this work?
Jen, do you have any questions?
No, Mike, you're only resetting the toe stones in that reconstruction area on that corner?
That's right.
Okay, and the rest of it, you're just,
Chinking.
okay. I have no questions. Can you use construction matting down in the tunnel area when you get your machines out there?
Sure.
Or you're just gonna put them right on the beach, low tide? Is that what
Yes.
you're thinking?
When I say yes, I'm talking about the rubber ones that are easy to move
Yeah.
and leak.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a contractor for the work yet?
No.
Okay.
Ed?
Yes, Mr. McGrath, I visited the site a couple of days ago. I did look closely at the riprap in that section which had been mortared. And I was looking at it myself and asking the question, there's some learning here. And what I tend to want to conclude is that mortaring riprap is probably not a very good idea. It probably looks very good when the job is first done. And everybody's, oh, look at that, man, that's going to last forever. But stones do tend to move around, so I guess I'm concluding from what I see there that mortaring riprap is not a good idea, and I would just like your professional opinion on that score.
It's the kiss of death for riprap because what actually happens is that there's a phenomenon where the soil particles move in response to both wave and to groundwater. And I actually saw a cave behind a mortared riprap that a child could have gone into that was very substantial. And then what happens is because you don't know there's a void there, when a hurricane comes, you're going to end up with catastrophic failure. There was one in Penzance that you wouldn't have believed how bad it was in Hurricane Bob. So mortaring riprap's the kiss of death as far as I'm concerned.
Good, thank you.
Tom?
Do you have any idea what this was? It looks like a foundation wall.
I think it was a beach house, but it's a think.
And that's coming out, you said?
Yes.
Any idea how deep it is?
Haven't got a clue, to be blunt.
Okay.
I hope it's not that deep.
Yeah. That's it.
Keep hoping, Mike.
Wonders never cease.
Mike?
No questions?
Courtney?
My only comment about the removing of that is, will that act as a destabilizer to start tearing that out?
That's why I don't want to, there's a note on the plan that tells you not to go within a certain number of feet of the toe stone. So there will be a little, some of it left. This is used as a beach, so I thought it would be better to remove it than leave it. And it's quite unsightly, and the associates want to remove it, the residents.
Trip hazard if nothing else.
Yeah. It was just a few years ago that I found a dolphin right there, washed
Dead?
up. Yeah.
There's a piece of,
And this, that
There's a
corner
rope
catches all
that's-
kinds of stuff. We had a deer there this year, washed up. Are there any other questions from the board? Are there any questions from the audience? I will entertain a motion.
Move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
We have a motion to close and take it under advisement. No other comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention?
Mr. Chairman, before I go, I would say that I'm glad that Mr. Schmidt read the letter, and I'd be happy to meet with various town committees acting as one to tell them about my suggestions. Because the current rate we're doing things, we're never going to restore the estuaries. So rather than criticize that process too much, I think it would be better to have some suggestions on how people can remove nitrogen, because right now they don't have a clue. And so I would think after town meeting, if you pick a certain date, I'd be happy to come before the commission and explain to you why and how I've come to the conclusions I have, and the recommendations I'd make to the whole town.
Thank you.
Yes, may I?
Quickly, please.
Yes, Mike, I've been away for 6 weeks on a vacation, or I would have, I had intended to send you a note responding to that letter you had in the paper. I did have a question, and maybe you can help. Could you do some of the calculations? In other words, based upon the concentration of nitrogen in the groundwater, how much watering do you need to do to get the equivalent of maybe a pound of nitrogen fertilizer?
I would like to...
In other words, how significant is the nitrogen there?
That's too complicated to do right now.
Yes, it
And
is too
what it
complicated
actually-
a conversation for right
Yes,
now.
we
This
need
is no
to-
longer going
no.
to be
It's
discussed
not
at
on
this
the
point in
Agenda.
time.
Let's move on.
But I'll be happy to make a
Gentlemen can have a
suggestion.
private discussion.
Yeah, thank you. We can do that in other business.
Thank you.
Right.
The next two hearings, the
Okay.
Black Beach Harbor Head Association was continued to March 27th. Michael George, 45 Dusty Miller, was continued to May 1st. The next is Scott and Catherine Anderson, 14 Quahog Pond Road, West Falmouth, for permission to raise the existing house and construct a 3-bedroom, single-family house with a screen porch, deck, landings with stairs, install a gravel driveway, native mitigation plantings, dry wells, utilities, relocate A&E panel, septic tank and chamber, remove bluestone walkways and patios, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this hearing was never opened. Jeff made some modifications to the plan on some of my comments. We didn't open this, did we, Jeff? No.
Pardon?
We didn't open this, did we?
Didn't open it. No, I still have
that's
the
what I thought.
abutters.
And I do have some comments on the existing plan, but I'll hold those comments until after Mr. Rother's presentation.
Thank you.
And I'm passing just the photos I took of the property back in January. Why, Mr. Powers was on the site with me.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
All right, hi, I'm Jeff Ryther with BSS Design, representing the Andersons. We have Scott Anderson with us tonight, and also Attorney Brian Wall. This project is on 14 Quahog Pond Lane. We've got Quahog Pond across this narrow road layout here of Quahog Pond Lane. As far as our resource areas, a little land under Salt Pond. We've got the salt marsh that borders that pond. The buffer to the salt marsh is 100 feet from the landward edge of the marsh, which is staked in the field. Also, over on the west side of the lot, there's a bordering vegetated wetland. It's a stem of freshwater wetland that comes off of the Great Sipwasset Marsh out this way. That's shown between the line here and the driveway to the abutting lot. There's also in this wetland, there's what is the former BVW line. You saw this line on 2 applications under notice of intent, and one of them was to rework the small art studio. It wasn't quite as large. Steve Stimson and Associates did the planting plan. They did a great job, but one thing that did occur during that restoration work was they put a lot of facultative wet shrubs, native shrubs in here, and planted it in. And by doing such, it actually moved the bordering vegetated wetland to this location here. So this was redone recently by Jack Vaccaro, and the data forms have been submitted under a supplemental application dated March 6th. That was last week. So that's sort of an unfortunate thing. Sometimes when you replant and you use sort of the facultative wet plants, then that tends to widen out your bordering vegetated wetlands. So I think that occurred by accident in this case. Anyway, the Andersons now own this, and they want to rebuild the three-bedroom cottage. Much like you've seen tonight, they looked into adding an addition onto it. They wanted to do a porch. They wanted to renovate the building. Again, its first floor is beneath the flood elevation. The flood elevation is shown here. I believe it's 14, elevation 14. That's over the entire lot, by the way. So I don't have any elevation 14 on this lot. Existing elevation is 9.8 for the first floor. We want to bring that up to first floor at 16.5 with the slab at grade, or more or less at grade, at elevation 8. And there will be a screen porch and a deck. When we filed this initially, we had it back 5 feet to meet the zoning setback of Quahog Pond. Although it's a very narrow lane, it still affords the 25-foot setback requirement minimum under new construction, but it's currently at 20 feet. If you see here, there's a 20-foot dimension to the existing corner of the house. And when we filed this initially, Jennifer made a comment, Jeff, a little close to those cedar trees in the backyard, and so she said perhaps you could move the house. So we moved it down. I had an error there, by the way. I was too close to the wetland here. I didn't match that corner, so I'm on the existing corner with a new wall of the house. And again, the front stairway down is at the corner of the existing house, matching those two setbacks. This is filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit as well. So looking at this vegetated wetland, we have two 50-foot lines or setbacks. One's the A buffer of the freshwater wetland, and then this is the B buffer of the freshwater wetland here. What takes precedence is the salt marsh, 100-foot. So all expansions are multiplied times 3 for a 3-to-1 mitigation on this lot. There was discussions in that introduction to the project about moving the tanks. Currently there's a septic tank and a pump chamber, and we're just going to excavate those out, and these are fairly new. There's a whole new Title V system, tank, pump chamber, leach field here, and we're going to relocate those two chambers to here, and the alarm and control panel as well. Currently there's no there's a few downspouts, but there's no dry wells, so we have a detail for that. And we show 4 dry wells around the house. The existing driveway will be kept with a little opening to a garage door here. Again, this house is elevated up 1 story to meet the flood regs, and so we're taking advantage of that with a parking space under the house there, just 1 space. Initially, we had a stairway in the back, an outdoor shower. That's been removed to allow more room to the cedar trees that surround the house here in the back. So again, we moved it 5 feet to the north and 3 feet to the east to make a little more room on this lot. Looking at the mitigation calculations, this has also been supplemented by Brian. He's going to talk about that a little bit later. We have DCPC calculations under 1039. Currently, there is 19,260 square foot of basically disturbed lot. The lot is 30,227. In that area, there's, you're basically a mowed area. There's this art studio, there's a bocce court, there's some gardens, there's some planting beds in the lawn. So that equals up to 19,260. And we took off the allowable under new construction, which is 6,000 times 10% equals 1,326 square feet. And we show 1,330 square feet here. Now the reason for this strange shape here, This network of paths that were allowed back when the Butels applied for the renovation of the art studio. And it wasn't that big, but they really overdid it, I thought, with plantings. But nonetheless, it's there, and we propose to lose this network of paths to fill in that area, so there'll be more of a solid buffer back here. And then we have the 1018 regulations. And that was, we have, I'm sorry, I have to review this a second. A calculation of, 3 to 1 times the difference of existing from the proposed mitigation, and that equals 1,263 square feet. Now, there might be a discussion about which one do you use. Is it a cumulative calculation? We've had 5 other cases right on Quahog Pond Lane where when you met with one calculation and it's larger than the other, then you've met them both. I think there's been a few other cases where there's been an addition from one to the other, and then coming up with a number that may be even somewhere in the area of 6 to 1, perhaps, on a lot. But I don't know if that's the intention of our regulations here. Hopefully that made sense. I don't know, but there's 2 calculations here. The 1039 DCPC calculation is the larger of the 2 replants, and that's shown here across the side of the lot. And at this time, I'd like Brian Wall to come up to discuss the application we sent in and additional information dated March 6th.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Wall. I'm an attorney, and I have an office in Sandwich. And I've been asked by the applicant to speak on one particular issue, maybe more, but at least on one, regarding whether or not what Jeff just said should be the rule, which is if you meet the requirements of the most demanding regulation, have you satisfied the other regulation? My understanding of the reason why this is an issue is that the application was filed, and before it came to a hearing, Ms. McKay asked Mr. Ryther to come to a meeting. I wasn't at that meeting, but Mr. Ryther has told me what happened, and Jen, if I misstated anything, tell me. But Jen informed us that, I'm sure you will, Jen informed us that the way that the commission is now interpreting this requirement is that it's a cumulative requirement, that you figure out what the requirements are of each independent regulation, and then you add them, and the applicant must do the total, cumulative total. We respectfully disagree, and I have a brief presentation to give about that. The DCPC regulation applies 10.39, and what that essentially says is that the impacts to the lot have to be reduced, and there's a calculation that Jeff performed. And what it says is that revegetation must take place during the project to return a certain portion of the lot to what's called a naturally vegetated state. And the regulation specifically says that the applicant can choose where to put those plantings. Separate and apart from the DCPC regulations are your buffer zone regulations, 1018. And as Jeff explained, there's a certain requirement in this plan, which is 1,263 feet. And under that regulation, the applicant must put the plants close to the wetlands and or in the Zone A or Zone B. The regulation specifies where those are. Well, in this particular case, the higher number happens to be the DCPC number, which is 1,326 square feet. So what the applicant did in this particular case was provided 1,330, a few square feet more than the number, plus 3 native trees. At least 1,263 square feet of that number is in the buffer zone A to comply with 1018. So our argument is quite simple. We have performed the higher number, and we chose under 1039 to put it in the Zone A, which we were able to do, and therefore we have satisfied both regulations by the plan as you see. I don't want to get too legalistic, but I think it's important for the commission to note the very simple number one rule for interpretation of regulations is to use what's called the plain meaning rule, which means that we apply ordinary and plain meaning usage to words that are in the regulations. And if you look very carefully at your regulations, nowhere does it say the requirements are to be added. They're independent regulations, they're in different sections of your regulations, and as long as we meet each of them, and as long as we meet both of them, we satisfy the requirements. I would go further to say that there's no prohibition in your regulations for doing what we're doing. The regulations could say, for instance, 1039 plantings cannot be in the Zone A. Or there could be something in 1018 that says any mitigation plantings required by 1018 cannot be used to meet the requirements of any other regulation or 1039. There's no prohibition to that, and there's no requirement for addition. And so I would respectfully submit that the manner in which they should be interpreted is in fact the way that we're suggesting. And we're not going out on a limb here. As Jeff said, there's historical evidence that the Commission has in fact interpreted the way that I'm suggesting. And I've submitted a letter with the argument that I just gave. And the second part of the letter identifies, and I submitted copies of the orders of conditions. Right on Quahog Pond Lane, there were a number of projects that were done in the last several years where the Commission allowed the projects to proceed by allowing the applicant to satisfy the larger of the two numbers and the location requirement of 1018. And I've cited those in my regulations. And I would submit to the Commission that if you have a historical pattern of interpreting your regulations, you can't change that pattern without changing your regulations. Otherwise, you're going to be acting arbitrarily. And so for those reasons, we would submit that the project meets your regulations and warrants approval. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First, I'm going to start with the wetland line. I'm going to go back to the beginning and come, Brian, I hate to make you jump up and down, but Jeff, I do have a little bit of a concern the way you phrase the statement that the wetland line moved. Wetlands and the delineation of wetlands use soils, vegetation, and indicators of hydrology. Merely planting facultative wetland plants in a buffer does not all of a sudden create a wetland. You need the soil and the hydric soil characteristics to do that. So if that wetland line did shift, there could be, it could be, and I was not around back when the cottage was redone, that the soils were not looked at, that there were hydric soils that had been, and that portion of the wetland had been altered, and that by planting these plants, the wetland is doing very well. But I mean, just by putting in viburnums, a facultative arrow, like an arrowwood, you don't create a wetland. So I do have just some concerns about the way that was presented. It's nice to see that the line is accurate now. I did ask you to do that, so that was great. You did revise the proposed the proposed cottage to take in some of the concerns that I had mentioned at our meeting to go over the project. Mike was on site when I was out there. We did look at those cedars, so those were some of the concerns we had. So it's nice to see that that has shifted to take into account those comments that I had. I will, now I can go back up there, Brian. I will have, I do have some disagreement with, and I respectfully disagree with Attorney Wall's assessment of the regulations. I did send your letter, Brian, to Pat. She got back to me at 2:30 this afternoon because you gave it to me Wednesday. I got it to her Friday. She was able to review the relevant information and get back to me, and I would be happy to forward a copy of this to you. It's her opinion that this board is correct in requiring the resource area buffer regulations and the DCPC mitigation plantings separately on the lot and to require both. The DCPC regulations do say, under their general performance standards, that any work in that area shall meet the performance standards for any other resource areas within which work is proposed and where the presumption is set forth, those shall apply as well. I did go back and look at the three projects that you had submitted, and if you go back and look at the plan of reference for 16A Quahog Pond Road, Mr. Salamini, you will see that those calculations were calculated out separately and both applied to the project. And in the case of 16 Quahog Pond, Mr. Salamini's, that was done in the amendment for the house, and that was also done for the pool. So there is consistent rulings by the board that require both the DCPC calculations and the resource area buffer regulations to be met. So that was in 2001, the amendment was in 2002, the pool on that site was in 2006. In 2009, and again in 2012, and these are just ones that I happen to remember, the board did require those projects, one at 18 Black Beach Road and one at 3 Black Beach Hills Road, to submit plans with both DCPC calculations and the resource area buffer. So in the time that I've been working with the board, these state that they have been requiring that both regulations and both mitigation areas be met on site. The good thing about the DCPC regulations is that you can put those mitigation requirements anywhere on the site within the DCPC. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's restricted to the zone, the buffer zone A or B of the resource area. So in that case, it gives the property owners in these really sensitive areas a little bit more leeway on what to do with those plantings when calculated. So I would like to see the plan revised, as I said originally, to take into account those calculations. Other than that, I just have one other quick question. Jeff, when you're putting that little path from the bocce court back, do you have to remove any of the prior mitigation plantings that were put there?
Well, I think you're talking about...
Yeah, just that little path. You're just going to meander it through? Because that whole area is planted.
Right, that's the idea. We're not supposed to pull anything out of there, but we just want to get to that gate.
Okay. No,
Now
that's fine.
It's hooked into this network. And there's one thing I just want to bring up, and I don't want to pinpoint any property, but the way your regulations are written, there are a few lots, and there's not many, that you could have 3 sections of your regulations that apply for planting. And in the worst case, it might be in the area of 10 to 1, you would have to plant back for an expansion. And I don't think that was ever the idea of this board, to write regulations where you plant that high. So, I think we're going back and forth. This is a fairly new interpretation. I believe I know those dates didn't seem to be, real current, but...
2006, 2009, 2012, and then back in 2001 and 2002.
Well, the ones
The last 12
that
years,
you
yeah.
referred to were plans done by BSS, and we, of course, showed the 2 calculations, but we then planted the larger of the 2.
Actually planted a combined total of the 2.
On one of them we did, but we showed the number. It was only to be the larger, but we planted, in fact, it was this project here, the restoration of that little item. I said they kind of overdid it with the number, but they put in a huge number when it was
Jeff, this board has, and I understand, you're representing your client, but I mean, I can think of another one that this board has required the DCPC plantings to be planted in addition to the resource area buffer plantings. That's the way this board has ruled on a number of cases within the DCPC. And
I haven't had a chance to see Pat Harris's letter, so I'm somewhat at a disadvantage. But I want to say a couple of things. I listened carefully to the way that Jennifer made the argument, and she said a number of times that both of the regulations are applied, both need to be met, and both need to be met on site. Our plan does that.
Brian, you know what I mean. I mean, they both need to be met separately.
They are met separately. In fact, if you look at 1039 in this particular instance requires 1,326 square feet. The plan has 1,330 square feet. 1039 specifically says the applicant may designate where the plantings go. That's what it says. These are your own regulations. If you look at 1018, the regulation requires 1,263 square feet, in this case in the A zone. This plan shows 1,263 square feet in the A zone. I'm not suggesting one or the other. Both of the applications, both of the regulations have been applied, and both have been independently met. I tried to think of some examples that I might give you to show the concept here, and I was struggling. But for example, when we buy a car, we often see that it says, this car meets California emissions standards. Those are the toughest in the country. Well, if you meet California, you meet Massachusetts. It's kind of the same thing. We had to meet the higher of the number, the DCPC. By meeting the higher number, we automatically meet the lower number. This one is a little bit more complicated because 1018 has an additional requirement that they have to meet a location as well. And so we did meet that location. I would submit that the plan meets your regulations, and I noticed at the very end of Jennifer's presentation, she said, Pat Harris said it's okay to independently determine the requirements and then add them. But those are the words that aren't in your regulation. It doesn't say and then add them anywhere. In 1039, it doesn't say these are in addition to 1018. And in 1018, it doesn't say ignore 1039. They're separate requirements which are separately met.
Mr. Chairman, you do understand, one second, Ed, you do understand what I am saying to you. I know you do. You have clear examples since 2006 of how this board has interpreted its own regulations. I appreciate Attorney Wall's argument. I respectfully disagree with his assessment and interpretation of the regs, and that's all the staff has to say. We can argue this for the next hour. We're just going to go in a circle, Attorney Wall and I, so I'm just going to, I respectfully disagree. And Brian, I will forward this to you and Jeff tomorrow if you'd like to see it.
Yes, please.
You gave it to us on Wednesday, and like I said, I had submitted, I think I sent her an email on Friday, and she asked to see some of the documents, so I brought them to her. So I did get this late today, and we tried to address your letter. Okay.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate. The appropriate section of the regulations we're referring to is only 5 or 6 lines, so it's a pretty brief paragraph. It's 10.395. It reads as follows. When the commission determines that land or waters within the Black Beach, Sippawisset Marsh District of critical planning concern overlays other resource areas listed in FWR 10.21 through 10.60, the applicable performance standards for each resource area shall be independently and collectively applied, and the project shall be appropriately conditioned to protect all stated resource area values. Key words here, I believe, are independent and collectively. Mr. Wall, I know you are familiar with this because you use that word independently, but you fail to also use that word collectively. It's independently and collectively applied, and that has been the basis of our recent decisions on this particular issue.
And I know, Mr. Schmidt, that you enjoy philosophy and I think wordsmithing. Collectively is different than cumulatively. Collectively means all. You use them collectively and independently. In this case, they are, I'm going to say the same thing. They're collectively being applied because they are both being applied and they are independently being applied. It doesn't say cumulatively, and I think Jeff makes an excellent argument. I don't think that the regulations would require a 10 or to 20 to 1 planting requirement, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Attorney Wall, then what makes this property different than the way the commission's ruled on the other properties? I mean, the commission has ruled to require both sets of regulations independently, cumulatively, collectively on 4 projects that we just set. What makes this project different?
And we gave you 3 that the commission didn't, so.
Actually 2, because 1 they did, so.
I stand by what I said. I ask you to point to the word cumulative or total or addition, and they're not in the regulations.
And if I may, we know staff's information for the board. We've now taken your testimony.
Yep.
I'm going to poll the board and see if there are any other concerns besides the one that we've been chewing on. Tom?
No other concerns.
Ed?
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Mike?
No, I think the changes that were made since I first saw the property are
Yep.
a great improvement.
Yeah, they do protect those cedars on that other side, on
Yes.
the south side of that cottage,
Absolutely.
which was a big concern, so that's a nice change to see.
No questions. No questions. All right. We as a board are going to be chewing on this, and we have our homework. If there's no other testimony from the applicant, or any questions from the board?
I just wanted you to be aware that, I met with Jennifer, as you know, and, I took notes. And I say here, enclosed are the plans that are in accordance with many of the comments, meaning I covered everything but this one particular restoration thing. So I did move the house. In fact, we made the house smaller, not huge, but a couple of feet to make it that much smaller. And by moving it over the existing house, it reduced the number of plants required. We reflagged the wetland for an updated wetland line, gave the data forms. We did the 1018 calcs over again for the smaller house, and we revised the limit of work to go along the whole back edge of the planting, and we revised the lot coverage accordingly. So it was that, and then one more thing was, the cumulative versus, independent. So I think we've done everything but one thing, and I don't think we need to do it based on past projects. But
And that will be something up in our deliberations. I will acknowledge that there were very positive moves made by the applicant with discussion.
Are we going to receive something from Pat?
That to Mike just asked about the letter from Pat.
I gave it, you want my copy, Mike? Have you seen it?
We've received it.
Yes, you've received it.
That's fine.
I
That's all I want
forwarded
to know
it to
that
you
we
this
have.
afternoon. I did not get back from the field until about 3:30 this afternoon, so it's in your emails late. And there's a copy in the file. Okay?
That's fine.
She sent it at 2:30. I actually went and picked up all the files she was reviewing at well after 3 today, so, right
If I
there.
could make one very brief point.
Please.
The commission has the power to quite easily change its regulations, I'm sure you know. You just have to come up with a suggested change, post it in the paper, hold a public hearing, and then vote. And so if the commission truly does intend to have it cumulative, it could make it very clear so that applicants like Mr. Anderson would know before they file. I think that the regulations as they currently stand support the interpretation that we've made, and I just want you to know that if you want to change your regulations, you can do that.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish it was easy as posting in one hearing now.
That's-
I think the last time we changed it, we had 16 public hearings, so it's never that easy. But I appreciate it.
legal requirement.
I know.
Yeah.
If it was that easy, it would be great.
Are there any other comments? All right, can I have a motion?
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to close and take it under advisement, seeing no other discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Brian, do you want a copy of this now, or do you want me to just email it to you?
Now on,
It's
Adjourn
in
the
record,
agenda
it's
for tonight.
available. Like I said, she sent
I
it
don't
out.
think there's any other.
I know,
I think that was it. You good, Jen?
Here it is, right here.
Time for
Is there,
adjournment.
yeah, well, almost. I'm gonna see if, Jen, is there any other business?
There isn't any other business other than Ed. You seem to want to have a discussion on nitrogen. Would you like me to schedule that at a good time where we can advertise it and there can be other people here to discuss it
I
besides
think that would be
you and
very-
Mr. McGrath?
Yeah, and actually, discussion on nitrogen, and we never did discuss the new bylaw related to
No,
fertilizer
we
application.
can do
That
that.
should be part of the same discussion.
Would you like to, why don't we put it on the agenda for the next time that we're reviewing the land subject to coastal zone flowage regs, which I think we gave a month on.
Right.
So I'll double check that and I'll put that down on that same day.
Right, and I guess the third part of the issues that all of this relates to is, part of the discussion is our position on irrigation systems.
Yep.
That
Nope.
could be impacted, I'm not saying it would be, but it could be impacted by this new information.
No, I understand that. I would much rather just have it on an agenda where you guys can discuss it instead of hijacking. I reprimanded Mr. McGrath as well outside.
Is there any other business at hand?
I just need you guys to sign these.
And
That's it.
I want to adjourn.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous, so moved. We're gonna sign and pass down to you guys.
Mike, those pictures of you in the field. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I
put those
noticed
in-
that.
Yes, put
I
those
noticed
and
that.
these.
Thank you.
Got me striking a handsome pose.
Yeah.